Welcome back to Rise and Fall of Fortunes, the place where we explore the breathtaking highs and devastating lows of power, money, and ambition. Today's story is a reminder that wealth can disappear faster than it's made, and that even the most powerful names can be reduced to whispers overnight. This is the story of a billionaire who lost everything in a single night. At the peak of his success, Adrian Keller was considered untouchable. His name appeared regularly on the covers of business magazines, often next to words like visionary, disruptor, and genius. He built his empire in less than 15 years, starting from a cramped apartment with a single laptop and an idea that promised to change the way the world moved money. Investors fought to get a meeting with him. Politicians returned his calls within minutes. Celebrities attended his private parties, posting carefully filtered glimpses of a life that looked like a modern fairy tale. Adrian liked to say he was self-made, and in many ways he was. Born to a middle-class family, he learned early the value of independence. His parents worked long hours, and by the time he was 16, Adrian was already experimenting with small online businesses. Some failed quietly, others earned him just enough to keep going. What set him apart wasn't luck, at least not at first. It was obsession. He slept 4 hours a night, read relentlessly, and believed deeply that the world rewarded those willing to sacrifice everything else. By his late 20s, Adrian had launched a financial technology platform that allowed instant cross-border payments. At a time when traditional banks were slow and expensive, his solution felt revolutionary. Venture capital poured in. The company expanded across continents, hiring thousands of employees in record time. Each funding round pushed Adrian's valuation higher, and with it, his personal net worth. By 35, he officially joined the Billionaire Club. Money changed his life, but more importantly, it changed how people treated him. Old acquaintances reappeared with friendly smiles and ambitious ideas. Industry leaders praised his courage publicly, even when they secretly feared him. Adrian convinced himself that this admiration was proof of his brilliance. He began to believe not only in his product, but in his own invincibility. As the company grew, so did the pressure to maintain impossible growth. Quarterly targets became aggressive, expansion plans became riskier. Adrian started making decisions faster, often relying on instinct instead of data. Those around him noticed the shift, but few dared to challenge him. After all, this was the man who had turned bold risks into billions. Who were they to question him now? Behind the scenes, cracks were forming. To fuel growth, the company began using complex financial instruments that promised short-term gains but carried enormous hidden risks. Advisors raised concerns in private meetings, warning that the system was becoming dangerously fragile. Adrian listened politely, then dismissed them. He believed caution was the language of people who had never built anything great. Late one autumn evening, Adrian attended a lavish event celebrating his company's latest milestone. The room was filled with champagne, applause, and confidence. On stage, Adrian spoke about the future, about how his platform would soon become essential to the global economy. The crowd believed him because he believed himself. That same night, far from the spotlight, a routine awed, it uncovered something alarming. A small discrepancy, barely noticeable at first, hinted at a much larger problem. As analysts dug deeper, they realized the company was massively overleveraged. A sudden market shift earlier that day had triggered a chain reaction, putting enormous strain on the company's liquidity. Emails began flying between departments, emergency calls were scheduled. By the time Adrian left the event and returned home, the situation had escalated from concerning to catastrophic. His phone buzzed non-stop, but he ignored it, assuming it was another minor issue that could wait until morning. It couldn't wait. In the early hours before dawn, global markets reacted violently to rumors spreading about Adrian's company. Confidence evaporated, major partners froze transactions, investors began selling shares at any price they could get. The company's stock collapsed, losing over 80% of its value in a matter of hours. When Adrian finally answered his phone, he was met with panic. Executives spoke in rushed sentences, explaining that margin calls were coming in faster than they could respond. Banks demanded immediate repayment. Without fresh capital, the company would be insolvent by sunrise. Adrian tried to remain calm. He called investors he had known for years, people who once praised his vision. Many didn't answer. Others offered sympathy but no help. The same confidence that had once surrounded his name now worked against him. Everyone assumed someone else would step in. No one did. As the sun rose, news outlets picked up the story. Headlines spread across the world, each more dramatic than the last. Analysts speculated, critics emerged from nowhere, pointing out warning signs that now seemed obvious in hindsight. The narrative shifted rapidly from genius entrepreneur to reckless gambler. By mid-morning, trading of the company's stock was halted. Regulators announced investigations. Lawyers advised silence. Adrian sat alone in his office, staring at screens that showed numbers he could hardly comprehend. His personal wealth, once measured in billions, was tied almost entirely to the company's valuation. As it collapsed, so did his fortune. In less than 24 hours, Adrian Keller went from billionaire to effectively broke. But the financial loss was only the beginning. As days passed, the full scale of the damage became clear. Thousands of employees faced layoffs. Partners distanced themselves publicly, releasing statements that emphasized their limited exposure. Former allies quietly deleted photos and posts that linked them to Adrian. Invitations stopped coming, calls went unanswered, the investigations intensified. Regulators questioned the company's accounting practices. Media outlets dissected Adrian's past decisions, painting a picture of arrogance and unchecked ambition. Every interview, every speech he had ever given was replayed and reinterpreted through this new lens. Adrian retreated from public view. The penthouse apartment he once loved now felt like a cage. Without meetings, events, or endless calls, time stretched painfully long. For the first time in years, he had space to think, and those thoughts were unforgiving. He replayed every decision that led him here, the warnings he ignored, the risks he normalized, the people he silenced. It became clear that the collapse wasn't caused by a single event, but by a series of choices fueled by ego and fear of slowing down. Friends who remained encouraged him to tell his side of the story, to fight back against the narrative. Adrian hesitated. He knew that explanations wouldn't change the outcome. The empire was gone. The fortune was gone. What remained was the question of who he was without them. Months later, the legal consequences began. While no criminal charges were filed, the financial penalties were severe. Adrian sold assets to cover debts and settlements. Luxury cars disappeared. Properties were sold quietly. The lifestyle he once considered normal vanished piece by piece. Yet, in the midst of loss, something unexpected happened. Stripped of power and status, Adrian experienced a kind of clarity he had never known. People who stayed by his side did so without expectation. Conversations became honest. For the first time, success was no longer defined by numbers on a screen. Adrian began speaking privately with young entrepreneurs, not as a hero, but as a warning. He talked about the dangers of unchecked growth, the illusion of invincibility, and the importance of listening to dissenting voices. He admitted his mistakes openly, something he would have considered weakness before. The world, however, rarely offers easy redemption. While some admired his honesty, others saw it as too little, too late. The business community moved on, always hungry for the next rising star. Adrian's name faded from headlines, replaced by newer, shinier stories of success. Years after the collapse, Adrian lived a quieter life. He worked as an advisor, choosing projects carefully and avoiding the spotlight. He no longer chased valuations or rankings. Instead, he focused on sustainability, ethics, and balance, lessons learned at an unimaginable cost. His story remains one of the most dramatic examples of how quickly fortune can turn. It's a reminder that wealth built on fragile foundations can disappear overnight, and that confidence, when unchecked, can become a liability rather than a strength. The rise of Adrian Keller shows us what ambition can achieve. His fall shows us what it can destroy. Between those two extremes lies a lesson that applies to all of us, whether we're building companies, careers, or dreams. Success is not just about how high you climb, but how stable the ground beneath you truly is. Because when the ground gives way, it doesn't matter how high you were, the fall is always the same, and that is the rise and fall of a fortune that vanished overnight.